We all know that last year was a poor one for the price of silver, but given that inflation concerns are ramping up coming into 2022, I thought it might be worth looking at some silver stocks. So in this video, we'll take a look at 4 different stocks and see whether there's potential for these after a really tough 2021. Hello, I'm David Jones from Capital.com, and I thought we'd do a video on silver stocks. We've already covered a silver outlook for the short term and the longer term. This year could be an interesting year with the threat of inflation or staying around longer than was expected maybe 6 months ago. Of course, traditionally, precious metals such as silver can perform well in times of inflation. So I thought, well, rather looking at the metal again, let's take a look at 4 stocks, or rather 3 stocks and an ETF, an exchange traded fund, and see what their fortunes might be when it comes to the year ahead and how they did last year. So as usual, in this video, I'll talk about these different stocks. We'll jump onto the platform, take a look at the charts in a bit more detail and see if there are any opportunities. If you're watching this and you haven't subscribed, if you could click on subscribe, it does help support the channel and it means we can continue to push out lots of hopefully interesting content throughout the week. Right, let's get into it and start things off with stock number 1. So the first one we're going to look at is Pan America Silver. So NASDAQ listed, it's the world's second largest primary silver producer. It owns and operates silver mines in South America, various countries in South America, and also in Canada. The latest earnings, this is the theme we'll see from some of these stocks, came in under market expectations. So the market was expecting quarterly earnings of around 35 cents a share. Pan American Silver earnings came in at 18 cents for the last quarter. So a bit of a disappointing quarterly earnings there. Disappointing year for the stock as well. If we look back to 2021 from start to finish, if you'd have held it all the way through, by the end of the year, you'd be sitting on a loss of 27% for the stock price. Is this year going to be any different? Take a look at the charts and see if we're going to see that trend change. So here's the chart of Pan American Silver, and you can see that the disappointing performance last year ended 2020 around $34.40. As late as December of last year, traded down below $22. And you could say it still looks weak. If we take a look at the RSI down here, it went oversold over the last few days. And the last time it went oversold, we did see something of a bounce. So I think for Pan American, it's still quite an interesting one. You know, the RSI is suggesting that perhaps when it goes down to 22, the price is being oversold. If we take a look at the moving average, I've put a 50-day moving average on here. Sell signal here as the price falls through in June. We do get a buy signal here in October. But because the price has been a bit more sideways since then, we got a sort of flip-flopping of the moving average and the price. The last signal from the moving average was a sell signal here, beginning of December, as the price falls through that 50-day moving average. And so far, at least, you can see it's capped the rally. The moving average at the moment is sitting around $25. So that's the level the price needs to break to signal a buy signal. But I think it is interesting, Pan American, going into this year. We had that slide that was in place from May through to October. And I do wonder if perhaps we're getting to the stage where the worst is behind it. I suppose if I was a buyer now, where would I put the stop loss? The other side of that December low. That December low was $21.34. The price at the time of recording is $23.66. So if we are going to see a recovery, I wouldn't want that December low to be taken out. So I think that's well worth keeping an eye on for some sort of comeback in 2022. The next one we're going to look at, it isn't a stock, but it is the ever popular exchange traded fund, the iShares Silver Trust, often referred to as paper silver by those who like to have real silver coins and bars in their hands, but clearly a popular one with plenty of investors who want to have exposure to silver without actually getting involved in buying and selling the metal. So the exchange traded fund is a way, for all sorts of markets of getting exposed to that market. Not surprisingly, the iShares Silver Trust tracks the underlying price of silver traded in the markets, the movements both up and down. Again, we saw silver drift in 2021, push lower. Not surprisingly, we've seen the iShares Silver Trust fall as well. So for last year, the return was minus 12% in 2021. If silver turns around and starts recovering this year, clearly this one's going to follow it as well. Let's see if there are any signs of that happening at the moment. So just a quick look at the iShares Silver Trust. This is one we have recently started covering. So I've only got data going back to June of last year. But of course, as you know, if you're a fan of silver, the iShares Silver Trust just follows the silver price. So we can have a look at a silver chart and see the same sort of movements. As with silver, we have seen these lows for the iShares Trust back in September last year, just below $20, coming in at $19.80. We did see the price briefly push below there in December, but we've seen it move away. So again, I think this $19.80 through to $20, $21 area is going to be an interesting one to watch for the iShares Silver Trust. If we drew a trend line on here, it's another candidate like Pan American that perhaps the worst is getting behind it. But of course, it all depends on what silver does. But we saw a good run after that trend line was broken. At the moment, it's not that far away from giving a buy signal on the 50-day moving average. If it can move through about $21.50, only 15 cents higher than where it is at the time of recording. So clearly, if we see more gains in silver, we'd expect the iShares Silver Trust to follow it higher. And I think a bullish target on the upside would be for a run to $23.50 in the medium term. But that's clearly one way of getting exposure to silver using this exchange traded fund. The next one we'll look at is First Majestic Silver. So it's a mining company focused on silver production, specifically in Mexico. Its latest earnings, like many of these companies, were disappointing. The market was forecasting a loss of around 1 cent a share. The latest quarterly earnings came in a bigger than expected loss of 9 cents a share. But when it comes to analysts' expectations, they're pretty bullish. Well, they're very bullish, actually. I think the average analyst price target for First Majestic Silver, not that there are going to be lots and lots of analysts covering it, but the average analyst price target is for $19. And given that currently it's trading around $11, that's a pretty bullish target for silver. I mean, I would tend to take analysts' expectations or forecasts with something of a pinch of salt. They do tend to be always bullish, but for the record, that's where they are on First Majestic Silver. We'll see how that turns out as the year goes on, but let's take a look at the stock price now. Let's see how it did last year and see if we're seeing things start to turn around in 2022. So here's First Majestic. Up until July of last year, it was in this uptrend. It had moved off the March 2020 lows where the stock was trading below $5. It got blipped up. I think that was in the part of the whole Reddit meme stock frenzy, January, February 2021. So traded up to $24. That's when we saw silver back then briefly above $30, very briefly. Then broke that trend line in July of last year. So if we picked up on a new trend from the highs in late Feb, I suppose you could say it looks something like this. We've got, I think, near enough 3 touches on the trend line. It didn't get quite close to it there. So for now, you could argue, well, that 11-month trend for First Majestic is still down. Like Pan American Silver, we have seen it try to build a base over recent months. For First Majestic, the low hit in December was briefly below $10. So that's perhaps something of a big support level to watch for the next few months ahead. I think the moving average at the moment is coming in around $12, so about $1 higher than where we are now. It's still that 50-day moving average. So still arguably in a downtrend, this one for now. But as ever, it's what happens with the price of silver this year. If we see it run away higher, we'd expect to see the First Majestic downtrend broken, but perhaps not as attractive as some of the others we've seen so far. The final one we're going to look at is a streaming company. These are popular. Wheaton Precious Metals, listed on the New York Stock Exchange and also the London Stock Exchange. It's one of the world's largest streaming precious metals companies. So what is streaming? I think, as we've said before, it's got nothing to do with Netflix or Spotify. It's where companies provide capital and enters into a contract with other businesses who are going to mine a specific area. And companies such as Wheaton contract to buy either some or all of the metals at a predetermined price when the deal is struck. So clearly, if it's struck and the price of the metal rises, that's good for the likes of Wheaton and vice versa. Last earnings for Wheaton came in at 30 cents in the last quarter. This was 10% down on the previous year's number. So again, disappointing, but perhaps not as bad as some of the other companies in the sector. And actually, Wheaton had a positive year from a stock price point of view last year. So the shares nudged higher slightly for the year, which is quite a big outperformance versus many in the sector. They were up 2.8% for 2021. Are we going to see that pick up in 2022? Let's take a look at the charts. I think out of the three silver stocks, perhaps from a technical point of view, Wheaton looks the most promising. If we look at the RSI down here, we've had this oversold RSI signal this year, actually, just in the last few days. The RSI went to oversold again, suggesting that perhaps the price has gone far enough down for now. If we look at the correction that was in place from August 2020, to me, it looked like that ended in April of last year. We've been broadly sideways since then. But so for me, coming into this year, it's still below that 50-day moving average. That 50-day moving average is sitting above $41 at the moment. So we'd need a $2 move from where we are now to give a buy signal on the 50-day moving average. But, it's made a good base since October last year. The October low was ahead of 36, traded down to $36.36. We've seen good support at 38 over the last month or so. So for me, 36 to 38, interesting support for Silver Wheaton. It does look like the worst is behind it. It's been a little bit sideways over the last, 7 months or so. But I think another one that clearly we'd expect to start gaining some ground if, and it might be a big if for now, if we see the price of silver start to recover this year. That's it for this update on 4 silver stocks. I think always interesting to keep an eye on. Particularly I think it's going to be an interesting year for gold and silver anyway because of inflation and the potential for interest rate rises. And they had such a disappointing year last year. Let's see how this year goes. But for now, we'll leave things there. So from me, David Jones and Capital.com, good luck with your trading. For more trading videos just like this, please subscribe to our channel.